The Flash is finally out in theaters after spending an entire decade in development. It had numerous director changes, screenwriter changes, scheduled postponements, delays due to COVID, delays due to Zack Snyder leaving the DC universe, and the remaining executives having clearly no idea where to go with this universe for a very long time. That wasn't even the end of the trouble. As the film was already in post production, the media became flooded with reports of Ezra Miller's various criminal behaviors. They assaulted someone in Hawaii, and again in Iceland, and again in Hawaii. They broke into someone's house in Vermont. They were also accused of grooming an underage girl. All around, just seems like they're a complete criminal asshole and a real life supervillain, which led to speculation whether the film would see the light of day, even. At the end of the day, it did, although hilariously, the marketing focused mainly on Michael Keaton returning as Batman 30 years after the Tim Burton films. So, it's out. It's directed by Andy Muschietti, who previously made both parts of Stephen King's It. The film stars Ezra Miller, Sasha Cale, Ben Affleck, Michael Keaton, and Michael Shannon. It's loosely inspired by the famous Flashpoint comics, and the story, without too many spoilers, goes like this. Barry Allen, the Flash, accidentally discovers that he can run so fast he travels back in time, and he can access various points in his past. He ends up going back to the day that his mother died. His mother was murdered, and his father was wrongly accused of doing the deed, and he prevents that key event from taking place. But then he ends up stuck in an alternate reality where, yes, his mother survived, but the only superhero that exists is Michael Keaton's retired Batman. There's another slightly younger version of Barry Allen running around who doesn't have his powers yet, and a new but not so new enemy appears, threatening to destroy the Earth unless he's stopped. So, I did try to be vague up until now, but the reality is, if you've seen the trailer or the posters, you know who's in the film, you know which versions of which characters show up, and I think that's a shame, honestly. It would have been really awesome to keep at least some of them as surprises. But anyway, how's the film? Well, usually such troubled productions end up being mediocre at best, but usually completely shit. So I was a bit surprised because even though The Flash is far from a perfect movie, in fact, there are many, many problems with it, and I'll get to them. I did end up enjoying it quite a bit, and I don't think it was a wasted time. I will start with the good stuff. I think that the thing that works best in the film is its very core. The Flash's character development, his interactions and relationship with his alternate self, the arc he ends up going through, the way his childhood trauma is shown to play into his awkwardness and social anxiety, and finally, as much as it pains me to say, Ezra Miller's double performance. I do think he's very good in this film, really inhabits both versions of the character, making them similar yet distinct. I enjoyed his work very, very much, which again is kind of difficult because by all accounts he's a shithead in real life. And this core part, everything revolving around the Flash himself, is, I think, strong enough to carry the movie after all, despite everything else being so flawed. So let's go through those other elements now. First of all, the two big supporting characters and their subplots. I mean, as much as it was cool to see Keaton's Batman again after all these years and hear the classic Danny Elfman score and see the Batmobile, etc., I think there are three huge problems with his inclusion. Number one, it very much is a case of studio going, hey, remember the legacy actor who used to play this famous character years ago? Well, now he's back. It's nostalgic and fun at the same time. Which is essentially the same thing Spider-Man No Way Home did already with Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield returning. And that film did it 100 times better because it kind of was a glorified cameo, but at the same time it wasn't. It fit those characters perfectly into the movie's storyline. They served a purpose. It wasn't just a cameo. Which leads to the second problem with the Batman here. His story arc is extremely limited and goes like this. Oh, I am retired. I left my superhero days behind. The Flash then says, okay, but I need your help. No, I need your help. And Batman goes, you son of a bitch, I'm in. That's all there is. It feels quick and cheap and kind of shallow. And thirdly, as much as I think Keaton is a fantastic actor and I've enjoyed him in many movies, he's definitely phoning it in here. A lot of his lines, he seems just bored and unexcited to be there, especially that line from the trailer where he repeats, you want to get nuts, let's get nuts. It really feels like that scene in Galaxy Quest with Alan Rickman where he says, by Graftar Summer, what a savings. There are similar issues with Supergirl, Kara Zor-El, to an extent. On paper, the idea with her character seems fantastic. She's a version of Superman who didn't get the traditional American loving upbringing. Instead, she only experienced the worst that humanity has to offer. So when she's initially like, I'm not saving this world, fuck off, it feels great. It really feels like a fresh take on Superman, like, or a version of Superman. Like, the film has stumbled onto something really new. But again, even quicker than Batman, she just changes her mind in 5 seconds and joins the good guys, which is a shame because in her case, I actually liked Sasha Cale's performance. I don't think she's phoning it in, and I loved the costume. I think it looks just sick on her. Really, one of the more beautiful superhero costumes in recent memory. But let's go to the other stuff though. I thought reusing Michael Shannon as Zod ended up being kind of boring and repetitive, which is also evident in his performance. Much like Keaton, he seems bored. The CGI across the film looks really bad. In some scenes, straight up unfinished, like the baby saving scenes early on, or everything that happens in the Speed Force. I mean, really, it looks like a PlayStation 2 cutscene, video game cutscene. It's that bad, and maybe I wouldn't get so hung up on it in a different film, but this is a movie where CGI is kind of in the forefront. It's a superhero action film. It needs to look brilliant, and it looks embarrassing instead. I also thought that the climax with the various worlds colliding felt at the same time gratuitous and underwhelming. Like, with some of the worlds and characters shown being actually pretty obscure. So instead of having that moment of going, oh wow, I can't believe they showed this actor or this character, you go, who's that supposed to be? And the biggest offender is, I won't spoil the specifics, but there's a certain cameo in here which is entirely CG, very visibly CG, with a rubber face looking straight out nightmarish, which is based entirely on a film that was never produced, a film that was described by Kevin Smith in that famous and hilarious story, which I'll post a link to it in the description because, believe me, it's better than the entire Flash film. But yeah, to sum all of this up somehow, I think this is an extremely flawed film that has very obvious glaring issues, but somehow the core of it, the central character and everything directly around them, manages to somewhat work and be entertaining in the end. I'll never say it's a good movie because it straight up isn't, but I managed to have fun anyway, to the point that if the universe wasn't getting rebooted, which it will be very shortly, and Ezra Miller wasn't a criminal, I wouldn't actually mind seeing more of them in the future.